Welcome to On the Bauble Podcast, episode 98. I'm your host, Bossa J. Wait on with me is my co-host, UQB Bender. Today we're going to be covering Battle Hardened Toronto, newly spoiled Hunted Weapons, and we're also going to be touching some of the Hunted expansion slot cards that we didn't get to the last time we talked about Hunted. But before we do that, how's your week, Yuki?
Yeah, my week's been pretty good. I've been getting back into Flesh and Blood a little bit, CC. Just been playing and trying to get ready for Battle Hardened Toronto. I kind of haven't been playing that much the last month or so outside of Armories. So, the break's been good, but I'm feeling hungry to get back into the game. Pretty excited. And yeah, Battle Hardened Toronto would be kind of my first event of the year, at least like non-armory event, and I'm looking forward to that. We're both heading to that, and yeah, that's kind of it. It's been like pretty light testing since it is just a Battle Hardened, and the format's pretty solved, but it's been good to kind of get back into things.
Playing a little bit and getting back into the game is nice through the holidays. It's like I think at the end of the year, end of December, like even the armories around, at least around us, kind of dies down, right? And like we get like maybe eight people at best during the Christmas season while everyone's doing family things. So it's kind of nice to see more people showing up for armories now too, right?
Yeah. Like for a while, like some armories weren't firing, or we'd have like really small turnouts, and now we've been getting back up to like 12 to 14, which is cool. I think a lot of people are getting geared up for the new set and for Road to Nationals, which will be following that just shortly after in February. So, yeah, exciting time. You want to go on to our Patreon question of the week?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, BNE Dub says, I hope everyone has had a nice Christmas/New Year's. I've been doing some goal setting for 2025. It seems appropriate given the time of the year. And something I wanted to start doing is recording and viewing my own gameplay. Very good thing to do. He says, my issue is I'm not really sure the best way to do it effectively. Would there be any scope for an evergreen style episode sometime in the future about maximizing gameplay review? Jay and I looked at this question and discussed it. And I think our conclusion is that there might not be enough for a full episode, but it's definitely something that we can touch on. So we're just kind of doing it as a short segment here where we talk about Patreon question. So what do you think, Jay? Have you done much gameplay review? I know that you've been mentioned, one of your goals, we kind of did some goal setting at the end of the year, 1 or 2 episodes ago, and one of your goals was to be testing more. Have you done much gameplay review? Is that something you have much experience with?
I typically don't do any gameplay reviews, or like at least I won't record any of my games to see where I made mistakes. I think what happens for me would be if there is any review for gameplay, it would be done like just after the game is done, and then at least point out where I've made the errors. So I wouldn't actually be recording any of my own games. And I guess in that sense, like to be able to record your game, it'll have to be done online mostly, right? You wouldn't be able to do this live.
Yeah, you could potentially do some kind of webcam setup, but I think it's usually easiest to do online. So maybe I can speak to this. I've done a little bit of gameplay review. I think I have some Patreon content going back a while of my Calling Hartford games with KO, where I kind of talk about that. The focus of that is a little different because I'm trying to sort of like share my thoughts with the viewers rather than necessarily like critique my own gameplay, although if there's space to do that, I will. But what I would say is go through, if you're able to see your hands, which is really easy to do with like Talishar, for example, it can be worth pausing and thinking about, okay, what do I think is the right play? Then what did I do? And comparing that and seeing if there are gaps in that and why. It could be that you've learned more since you played that game. It could be that you made a mistake then. It could be that you made a mistake now. I've done that before. I've been like, oh, I think I should do this. And I make a play. I'm like, wow, that play was so much smarter. Good job, past me. um, but I think that that sort of like comparison of what you would do and then what happens is really important. And you can even do this with gameplay of people that is not yourself. So if you're watching maybe somebody playing a hero that you're familiar with, but maybe it's like a tournament game from stream, and some big event or something, you can kind of compare. And if you're able to see their hand, you can pause and go, okay, what do I think is the play here? Or if they do something and you go, I don't know why they did that, pause and try and figure out like what might be the reason for them doing that, and how does it play out, right? Because that's kind of the next step is like, what did they do, why did they do it, and then how did that play out? Because sometimes people will make decisions and you arsenal a card and that card can be clutch and win the game, and other times that card gets stuck in arsenal and you're like, I had no arsenal for 7 turns and I could never really like play this, I don't know, Revel in Rune Blood I arsenaled or whatever it is. So I think the reasoning and then the kind of fallout of that decision is like the main thing that I would be looking for in gameplay review.
That makes sense. If you are to record your own gameplay, like what program do you use to do so, or is it that's not built into Talishar, right?
I don't think so. I'll say that I feel like I'm generally like not the most comfortable with Talishar in general. So there's like features that I don't know about. It wouldn't surprise me. But the way that I would do it is I would record it with a program like OBS, which is open broadcast software. It should be available for free. And that should let you set up a screen capture of your game and do that. So yeah, that's a good resource for you. And then maybe the last thing that I'll say is if you want some ideas around this, you can also look at content that other people do. So check out those Calling Hartford games that I had. You can kind of like look at some of that reasoning and some of those thoughts. I believe Peter at Mask Momentum does some gameplay review. I think that also, what is his name? Lupine Fiasco has a YouTube channel. I think he was playing a lot of KO and more recently has been playing a lot of Aurora. Does regular gameplay review, I think a few times a week, where he kind of does exactly what you're talking about. Plays some games, records them, and does that, and does a whole review of kind of here's my thought process, here's what I did, here's what I learned, and I think that he does a very good job of that, and that might be kind of like a good model for you.
Yeah, mostly if you're trying to record your own game to look at it, I think that's a good example. Maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
the best way of saying it.
Yeah, exactly. And just like you could even take notes on some of the things, like what is he looking for? What are the questions he's asking himself? What is he noticing? And trying to implement some of that in your own gameplay. But a lot of it is, I know a lot of it is around that sort of reasoning of like, I'm going to pause what I think the play is. I think this is the play. I didn't do that play. And then some reflection on like, why was that? Did I miss it? Did I overvalue something? Did I not understand something about the matchup? Did I rush, et cetera, et cetera? It could be any number of reasons, but try and do that kind of reflective piece. So not just the decision, but the why behind it is pretty important.
That makes sense. And I think one note that I would have to say would be like if you are recording an OBS, not even just a screen capture, you can record your own. Like if you have a mic set up, then you should be able to like record yourself talking. And if you
Mhm.
have multiple lines, if you just like speak to yourself or like at least speak into the mic what your lines, your other options are on that turn, and then you can see that if you have had options and you like chose different options and how that would basically affect the game. Typically, it would be like, did you want to block this turn more, or if you wanted to block less? And that's typically the biggest difference in like decision will be like, do you want to preserve your life totals or do you want to be like playing your hand out? And obviously sometimes like one decision is going to be significantly better than the other, so you don't have to really think about it. But like when it's close and like your turn cycle after blocking is 12 or your turn cycle after attacking is 12, it can make quite a bit of a difference of like the difference between blocking and attacking. At least pointing out to yourself that you thought about it would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe one other tip that I didn't think of initially is review at 2 times speed and pause where you need to is sort of my recommendation. You can even use the seek function. So if you have it, it'll depend on the player you're using, but like on YouTube, for example, if storage is a space, you could make a YouTube channel and post them as unlisted videos that people can access if they have a direct link to it, but they don't actually go up into YouTube on the algorithm, so it doesn't have to be public. So that can be like a way to save storage space. And then when you're reviewing it, if you press the left and right arrow, it will seek by 5 seconds. And that's something I do a lot. if I'm doing VOD review with people in coaching is I'll play it at 2 times speed and I'll kind of seek through sometimes, especially just if players are tanking, right? Because like if you're sitting there and you're like waiting for your opponent to think, like you've already done that in the game, you don't need to do that again during VOD review. So I think cutting those parts out will just make you a lot more time efficient as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like waiting for your opponent to tank is during review seems seems redundant.
Yeah, yeah, and I think ultimately, like rather than like thinking while you were thinking in the real game, just like when you see the hand, pause, take all the time that you need to think thoroughly through it. Because like sometimes maybe I know sometimes people mention feeling brushed on Talishar because the inactivity timer or stuff like that. So take all the time that you need to think things through fully, and then reflect on the decision. You can play and seek through to the point where you actually make the play, and then you can pause again if you need to pause. But I think doing that's important because I think something you can run into is like if you're not giving yourself sufficient time to think, you can sort of be like thinking and your thoughts aren't fully finished, and then you see a play and you're like, oh yeah, that play makes sense, but you're not really thinking it through. So really just like I would separate that as much as you can, think it through on your own without having to worry about like seeing the next play and being influenced by that, and then see if you agree with what happened in the game is kind of what I would do.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think about sharing your VODs with like other people so then you can get input from other people?
Yeah, this was actually what I was just going to mention. Yeah, I think this is really good. You can even, there's a few ways you could do this. You could exchange VODs with another person and both review each other's VODs, or you could sit down and review a game or two together. It's also reasonable to be like, there's this decision in this game that you identify as like a key decision or a turn where you're really not sure what the play is, and you can give, especially if you put it up on YouTube unlisted video, like I mentioned, you can put a timestamp and go, "Hey, here's this decision. What should I do here?" And I think that's another great way to learn. That is sometimes maybe lower time commitment for somebody that you're asking than getting them to sit through the whole game and watch with you. Because I'll warn you, if you sit and VOD review with like multiple people, you'll probably take longer than the game took to play, which is fine. Like you learn a lot, but just be aware that it is a significant time investment.
Yeah, finding someone to do that with you is also kind of difficult. So maybe not something that's like viable for a lot of people, but definitely if you have the resources or like a friend that will be willing to do it with you, probably worth it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I have to say about this. I guess the last thing you could try doing is, so this person submitted this question through the Patreon Discord, and if you would like to do the same, you can, join the Discord and submit your questions there and get them read out on the podcast and answered. But what I would say is that as a member of the Patreon Discord, there is in constructed a What's the Play channel that was quite active for a while, that hasn't seen much use in a while. But I'm sure if you wanted to resurrect that channel, you could. So if you, this takes some bravery, but I'm sure that if you wanted to, like I said, if there was like a key decision somewhere and you had a timestamp to that VOD on YouTube, maybe as an unlisted video again, you could post it there and ask people for their opinion, and think that somebody would probably reply to you. So yeah, potentially get another perspective that way. You could give that a shot.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. And honestly, like if it's there, then both myself and you will probably look at it too, right? So
Yeah, yeah, we'll probably get to it. I guess if everybody does this constantly, it would be like hard to hard to look at all of them. But at the moment, there was a while where that channel was being used quite a bit, and it's died down. But yeah, at the moment, like there's quite a bit of room for people to be posting in there. So if there is stuff, especially those key decisions, people can help. I think the more that you're like, here's 5 games that I played, how can I improve? Like that's like a pretty big ask, and you might not get as much engagement. But I think if you're able to condense it down to like, this is like a really key decision. Here was my thinking. What do you think I should have done? Kind of thing.
yeah, if it's one turn for sure, we can look at it and give you the input. But yeah, one game might be kind of tough.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that helps you out. All right, I think that's going to wrap us up for this listener question. Thank you, BNA Dub, for submitting that. Again, if you're interested in submitting your own questions, you can do that on the Patreon Discord. There is a what is it? you can put in the content requests channel or the patron questions channel. Either one works. Maybe we can condense that into one. But anyways, either one of those channel works. And I just also want to take this time to thank all of our patrons. The support has been really incredible, and we kind of reflected on this at the end of last year, but it's just been amazing to see how much everything has grown and how much support there is in the community, and we couldn't be doing this without you. So thank you so much, and I'm really excited to get into the Hunted and start talking about the new limited set and doing kind of what our podcast focuses on, right? Talking about limited with everyone in the Discord. So thank you, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, the world premiere is coming up. It's not this weekend for us, but it'll be the next weekend. It will probably be this weekend for the people listening because this episode's probably coming out on 13th or the 12th or something like that. So it'll be the Haunted is coming up very soon. But I guess before we talk about the Haunted, there is an event that we're going to this weekend, which is going to be Battle Hardened Toronto. So this is going to be hosted from January 11th and 12th. I guess the Battle Hardened is going to be on the 11th, and the ProQuest Plus is going to be on the 12th. And this is going to be a CC Battle Hardened. Um, what do you want to talk about first about this event?
I guess I'll just shout out Invasion. Invasion is the store hosting this event, and I believe this is their first kind of like big event that they've gotten outside of like ProQuest, the usual store level stuff you'd expect. I know they've been really hungry for it, and it's pretty exciting. This is looking to be like one of the bigger standalone battle hardens we've ever seen. So one, as far as ones that aren't attached to like callings, pro tours, stuff like that, it is on the very large side. So I think that on their website they have a 220 player cap, and as of recording, there is only 14 in stock. Sorry, 224 player cap, 14 in stock. So that would leave 210 tickets sold. I'm sure there will be some no shows. There pretty much always are. But still, if we get, say, 200 players, that is pretty massive and honestly really exciting because Canada, I think this is our second ever Battle Hardened. No, third ever. We had Battle Hardened Toronto, I think 2 years ago. We had Battle Hardened Vancouver last year, and then I think this is the second Battle Hardened in Toronto, and I think that's it. So there just like hasn't been many Battle Hardens or above, and it's very cool to see. I don't know, just so much appetite for events.
Yeah, it's a big battle hardened. Like 200 over 200 players is like creeping close to like almost calling level attendance, right?
Yeah, especially some of the smaller callings and some of the like yeah, it always depends on the calling, like what where it is, what timing it is, but some of the smaller callings can be around like 250-ish. So yeah, this is pretty massive.
Do you want to talk about what deck you're gonna, or at least what deck you're thinking about bringing to the event, or are you locked on a CC deck already?
Yeah, I think I'm locked. I should be locked on CYB new. One of the things I talked about in I think the most recent article I did, where I kind of talked about Portland and reviewed my year in Flesh and Blood a little bit. That's over on the Patreon if you're interested. Um, in that, I kind of talked about wanting to lock in decks earlier and work on my tournament prep a little bit, feeling like that kind of hurt me a little bit this year. So, in line with that, I'm locked on CYB new. It's a deck that I've played. I played it at Amsterdam, and it's a deck that I've played kind of during Zen meta quite a bit, and I really, really enjoyed. I'd kind of taken a break from that deck and hadn't really so much touched it that much since Amsterdam, but I think that she's reasonably well positioned, and I actually really like the CYB version. Um, so even though this is like post ban, and we saw like Michael Hamilton play CYB new in Osaka for the first time, um, we've since seen in CYB new make finals in Portland, and my list is very similar to Victor's list. I actually test with Victor; he's a good friend of mine. I'll be staying with him at the Battle Harden, so definitely some influence there. I might make a few tweaks to it, a couple of changes, but overall, I really like what the CYBs do for that deck, and that's kind of what I'm thinking of playing. What about you, Jay? Do you have a deck in mind?
Yeah, so Yesterday night, I was testing with Yuki at her place, and at the very end of the night, I was like basically conflicted between playing Zen, New, maybe Enigma, and something else. And I decided to roll a d6 to decide on what hero I was gonna lock up, and I rolled a two, which we assigned that to be New. So I'm playing New for sure. I am just not sure which variant of New I'm gonna play. Yuki's been trying to convince me to play CYB, so it's a very high likely, and you know, come to Battle Hardened with a CYB list. Otherwise, I would probably be playing a very similar list to the list I played in Portland, which will be just like my Traverse New. Be playing a little bit more aggressive, like trying to pummel people, that type of New.
Yeah, definitely a few builds that are out there. I think just last week we saw in Battle Hardened. Yeah, Battle Hardened Hong Kong. Xing, who has been absolutely crushing it recently, but Xing Sang was, I think, top four on new, and that was a non CYB list. And I think I saw another top eight list from that event. I forget who it was, but that list was CYB. So I think that there's definitely merit to both styles of lists and some room for preferences there.
So yeah, that being said, you're gonna send me a new list, right? And I'm gonna look into it. Maybe play the CYB stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be sending you a list. You can try it out and see what you think. I guess I can speak very briefly to the idea behind the CYB new versus regular new. So CYB new still gets to play like all the same disruptive attacks and all the attack reactions, but you have CYBs and a few less of like the other threats, like many lists cut down on weakest links, for example. But what ends up happening is you get to put your opponent in a lot of really tough spots because you are incentivized to hold cards in hand to play your CYBs. And you kind of just get to like make plays where you stare at your opponent. You like play a leave no witnesses and you're holding three cards and you have a card in arsenal and you like didn't block. And your opponent has to like try to figure out what to do if it's like a hiss and you're going to go into other stuff or what it is. And like some amount of the time it is that and you just go super wide, and then some amount of the time, you just pitch a blue and play a CYB, then Tunic and play another CYB and gain like 10 plus life. And I think just adding such a wide range in what you can do makes the deck even harder to play against, and also gives you a really strong fatigue angle where News late game is super good with Mask of Recurring Nightmares. You will run them out of cards, especially because you will incidentally mill some cards off the top with with cards like Leave No Witnesses, um, Prognosis. Just so many of our attacks take a card off the top of the deck that you will just kind of burn through their deck eventually. And if you can just sort of not die and keep disrupting them and keeping them off balance, you kind of just like force them to guess into you, whether you have attack reacts, whether you have CYBs, and yeah, if they guess wrong, they can fall very very far behind. Like the turn cycles where you like play a bonds and they block and you get to CYB and just gain some life and they blocked three cards just feels gross, honestly.
That's fair. That's fair.
So that's sort of why I like the CYB variant. You do play very long games of Flesh and Blood. Most of your games come down to decking. Yeah, you just need a lot of turns to enable that plan. So
Yeah, no, honestly, it does sound like a plan that I really enjoy. There's a high chance I'll play COAB. There might be a chance I play Traverse. I will be deciding that right before the Battle Harden. Basically, I'll probably have it locked by the time I get on the flight to Toronto. We will see. We will see.
oh, the last reason I like CYB is sometimes in new you just like dagger because you want to spend two resources, but not really because you like want a dagger, you know?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, you just have two floating resources you have to use somewhere.
Yeah, and you're just like, yeah, I'll do one damage. But when you get to play a CYB, it feels really good. Like I really like going like CYB Codex CNC with Tunic. Or even just like Tunic, you're holding a card, they have to be like you kept a card. Is it Siren's Call? And then you're like, nah, it's not Siren's Call. It's just CYB.
Yeah, it's just gain 6.
Yeah, it's just gain 6. And then the grossest part is when you just like have multiple options. Like sometimes you're holding the CYB and the attack reactions, and you're like, okay, like what are you gonna do? If you don't block this bonds, I reacted over an arsenal of the CYB. You do react the bonds, I just gained some life, and it's just it's really nasty. So that's kind of what I like. It just gives you like a good pitch outlet, even though it's like not the most like efficient card in terms of the average life gained off of 2 cards. So when sometimes you're daggering, it's like actually pretty efficient.
Yeah, I guess if you compare it to a dagger, it's just significantly more efficient.
Yeah, that's like kind of it. And you can kind of like usually always convert your hands. You do get like the all red like attack react react hands still, and like those are still pretty cursed. It does help you convert hands for sure.
Oh, I remember yesterday's hand. I was watching over Yuki's shoulder playing the CYB new, and she draws like a 4 red hand, and I'm like, wow, that's insane because this 4 red hand converted okay because it was like exactly the turn her tunic ticked up to 3. And I was like, oh, good players are just like built to draw 4 red hands on the tunic turn, so it's not that bad. And as I said
I
this,
got to play CNC pitching a red and playing with Tunic.
yeah, it was CNC, and which means it's not that bad of a turn.
Yeah.
But then, as I said this, she draws up her next hand. It's a 4 reds again, and I go, "Oh, never mind. This is doomed."
and then I got CNC'd, and 2 of the reds were D reacts, and I had to pitch 2 D reacts to dagger.
Yeah, it was a new moment for sure.
Yeah, it does happen.
Okay, what do you think about the meta game for Battle Hardened Toronto? Then I know you're playing CYB new, but what do you think the most popular deck at Battle Hardened Toronto is going to be?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there has been kind of like a gap since we've seen events. My guess is that there's going to be a lot of Viscerai and Zen. But in terms of good, like strong decks, I kind of think that if the hero says MST, it's good. So that would be Enigma, New, Zen. I think all of those heroes are very good right now. And then I think both of the Rosetta Rune Blades. No, that's a lie. I don't think Florian's good. I was thinking Viscerai and Aurora, I think, are also pretty reasonable decks. So I kind of think like those 5 heroes, the 2 Rune Blades, Viscerai and Aurora, that is. I guess there's 4 Rune Blades in the game, so it's not a very useful statement. And then the MST heroes. And I think that those decks are like all pretty good, and anything else you're playing is like I think a fair bit worse, but I don't know. That's sort of been my take, and I feel like it's like very interesting because you see, like what's interesting to me about this metagame is like you see Battle Hardened Hong Kong rather, and in Battle Hardened Hong Kong, we saw we've been like seeing like a full fall off of Enigma. There's been no Enigma, although I do think she's a pretty good deck. There was like a bunch of Aurora. I think like an Ira won the PQ plus. And I think there was like no Zen. And there was some news in there. And then you go to North America and there's like much more Viscerai. North America really likes Viscerai, but North America doesn't seem to like Aurora very much, or at least Aurora doesn't seem to be topping very much. And we also don't typically see as much new and a lot more Zen. So yeah, I don't know why that is exactly. I'd be curious to see what would happen if we like continue to play out this metagame because I suspect that there's like maybe some regional differences in the way that decks are being built and played. But yeah, it does feel like those are kind of like the pillars of the format, I guess. And maybe it's just week to week adaptation, or maybe it's something else. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, it probably has a big thing to do with like someone like putting Tam wanting to play Aurora, so that deck kind of comes up top more often as well.
Yeah, it might just be like what the strong players gravitate to. That could be the case because like we saw Pudding's been crushing it. I think we also saw Alan Lau top 8 the same event on the same Aurora deck. Alan Lau also super strong, top 8ed the most recent Worlds on Dash.io. So yeah, maybe it's that simple. Just like what Blue Pitch plays.
Yeah, and then in the North America, it's like, oh, Enigma wins a lot more because, someone like Michael Fang plays Enigma and then brings it all the way to the top with Michael Hamilton, right?
That's true. That's true. And then you have like Brody on Viscera. Yeah, so maybe it's just like what the strong players are gravitating towards. I'm not totally sure. I feel like I hear like some amount of conflicted takes on like I think like a lot of the sentiment on Aurora is low from quite a few groups. But I play against Aurora and I'm like, that deck's pretty good. I don't really want to play Aurora because it's like not really the type of flesh and blood that I want to be playing. But I do think that Aurora is pretty strong, and I do think that Pudding's list is pretty impressive. I like it a lot. Um, Basically, more D reacts, a few less instants, and lower flicker wisp package. So it's like a little more mid rangey. Yeah, I think that deck seems very very solid.
Yeah, just being able to play block cards with block value is nice in Flesh and Blood. So I can see why they want to gravitate towards that. Mostly if they can leverage multiple turns.
It probably also helps them play against new because it seems like there's more new in that area. Maybe because Shing likes new, um, another very strong player from Blue Bitch. But yeah, so it could be a lot of like local meta and what strong players gravitate towards.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, then do you want to move on and talk about some of the newly spoiled Hunted cards?
So since the last time we did our spoiler talk, we've gotten a few new cards. We kind of talked about like the non-expansion slot cards, and since then we've gotten the weapons. So only 3 cards, but the weapons are typically really, really important in Flesh and Blood. They really define what the heroes do. Sometimes some weapons are more limited weapons rather than CC weapons. We saw this in the case of Florian, where Florian revolved around Rotwood Reaper a lot in limited, but in constructed, that card just doesn't really see play. So, kind of depends, but we'll talk about each of these weapons and maybe talk about implications for both CC and potentially limited, just kind of whatever comes to mind as we read them. And then after that, we'll be going into some of the expansion slot cards, which have been spoiled for a while now, but we just haven't gotten around to. So we'll be giving you our thoughts on the expansion slot cards that we've seen so far as well. So for Hunted Weapons, we're going to start with what I think is probably the most exciting hero to talk about, at least as of right now, mostly because I think she's sort of like so I'm talking about Syndra. She's kind of the most. She feels like the most complete or fleshed out, maybe because she seems the least reliant on marking, and we don't really know how to mark very much at the moment. So the other two, like Fang and Arachne, are still kind of hard to evaluate. Syndra feels like she has a game plan even without marking, which is kind of cool. So Syndra's weapon is Kunai of Retribution. This is a draconic ninja weapon. It's a one-handed dagger that attacks for 1 and has a once per turn action. Pay a resource, destroy this when the combat chain closes. That's all part of the cost. And then it says attack, go again. So basically a Kodachi that doesn't require you to pitch a 0 cost. You can pitch anything into it. You can even tunic counter for it, which is pretty sweet. It's a draconic chain link, which many draconic cards kind of care about. And it naturally destroys itself. The timing here is really important. It's when the combat chain closes. So the reason this is significant is Syndra's hero text equips up to 2 draconic daggers from the graveyard, and it costs 1 less for each active draconic chain link you control. So if you are using the daggers as chain links, they won't be destroyed yet, and you can only basically if neither dagger is destroyed and you activate Syndra's ability, you won't equip any new daggers because you still have 2 daggers equipped. If you I think the card to talk about here is Flick Knives. If you use Flick Knives to flick 1 dagger and you've attacked with both daggers, you can activate Syndra with the discount, get 1 dagger back, and then the dagger that you haven't flicked will be destroyed when the combat chain closes, is like kind of how this works.
I think this weapon is kind of exactly what we wanted, right? For Syndra. Because like we were talking about a couple weeks ago about how no way they're gonna print a Kodachi because that'll be too good,
Hmm.
and that's basically what we got. We just got a Kodachi that says Draconic on it.
Yeah, and Draconic Kodachi is pretty strong. I think so. I think that I mentioned flick knives. Basically, this dagger's pretty interesting. It gives you the incentive to find ways to throw your daggers. I think that that's going to be. I suspect it will be a sub theme that we see in the set. So in Classic Constructed, I think flick knives is almost certainly going to be the arm piece that that Syndra uses. It works really nicely with Mask of Momentum. So basically, the way this interaction works is, let's say you go dagger, dagger, head jab. They block three. They don't block the daggers. They block three on the head jab, which would break your Mask of Momentum chain links. You can flick knives on the head jab, the third chain link, and it will count as having hit. Now, your dagger's not an attack action, so you won't draw a card. It counts as a dagger hitting on that chain link, but you do preserve your Mask of Momentum. So it sees that you've hit with dagger, dagger, and then on the third chain link, which is, let's say, the head jab, you flick knives, so you still hit, and then your fourth attack will threaten Mask again. So Syndra effectively with flick knives gets to not only deal some unpreventable chip damage, but really push these Mask on hits, which is honestly really, really powerful. I think that's a really strong ability that she gets to have. And I think that Syndra, even just with like the handful of cards we've seen, is already like kind of close to viable and a pretty reasonable Flesh and Blood deck, which is impressive.
Yeah, that makes sense. Syndra seems to be the deck that might be able to punish aggro decks in general. Like she's the aggro deck that punishes other aggro decks.
Yeah, she's just really, really tough to block against. And even if you want to give equipment, you probably have to just like I was playing Aurora into her and I was just like, oh, like, it's coming in for three, that's two pieces of equipment, and the next thing comes in for four. Like I can give like another like two pieces of two block equipment, and like that's like my whole fridge to block one mask trigger, which is crazy. So yeah, I think some decks are just not going to be able to block out her mask, to be honest. Like if you're playing Azalea, good luck. I mean, I guess Azalea gets Tarpit Trap. Tarpit Trap's really good, but Tarpit Trap's really good against Mask. Holy.
Yeah, Tarpit Trap is good against Mask. It's always been good against Mask. It's just the Mask of Momentum hasn't really been played outside of IRA right now.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it like basically the way that Tarpit Trap works is like if Mask could trigger, then basically like if you block Tarpit Trap on the third chain link and they flick knives to keep the thing alive, Mask can trigger on the fourth attack. It will try to trigger, but then Tarpit Trap will say no. There's no on hits, so it will shut down the on hit on the mask. And because Mask Momentum is like I think it's once per turn or the first time you hit with chain link 3 or higher, it just gets eaten for the whole turn. So Tarpit Trap, really good way to shut down Syndra, I guess. So, anyways, but yeah, I think that for against most heroes, especially ones with low armor, sometimes even ones that do have armor, blocking this out is a nuisance. I played a tiny bit of new into this deck, and I think that new is like pretty okay, but I had to give up multiple mass triggers into Syndra because it was just like I don't know, like they go dagger dagger three, you block three on their three, they flick knives, and then they go E strike, and you're like, do I want to block seven and do nothing and give up my whole hand? Because like maybe I don't have the D react. It's like, no, my hand's pretty good, or my hand has like a no block in it. Okay, you get the card draw. Now I'm gonna CNC your arsenal, um, but yeah, no, like it's impressive, right? Because I think that like most Mask of Momentum decks into Syndra, like or into new, like just don't play Mask of Momentum is like kind of the reality. They're just like, oh, I'm gonna play Lynx because I'm never gonna get Mask to hit. Whereas like Syndra already is able to get it to hit multiple times. You just create these really kind of like untenable spots for your opponent.
No, that's interesting. I didn't have that experience playing against Syndra yesterday. That might just be a difference between CYB and non CYB.
Yeah, maybe it's because I have all the no blocks.
Yeah, I think the increased number of no blocks and like not being able to block with your Mask of Recurring like early might be a bigger reason why you won't be able to do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I just ended up just blocking everything. I just like always blocked the first dagger that came out with my equipment, and then blocked like the third attack or something, and then they kind of ran out of attacks after that.
Okay.
Yeah, and blocking for 9, very good in regular new without CYBs.
Yeah. Blocking for 9 is just good in new in general. But yeah, so I think Kunai of Retribution's pretty strong. I think some of the strength of this will depend on how many ways we get to flick knives, because basically, like, if you're able to flick a knife and then use like flick knives, let's say, to flick the other one every turn, you can her ability returns 2 draconic daggers. So I think like ideally you can swing with both weapons and then flick both of them and drop and get both of them back. The alternative way that this can play out in CC is you go like dagger, dagger, attack, flick, get back 1 dagger. Going into your next turn, you have 1 dagger, and you go like dagger with, I don't know, some head jabs or something. You flick that dagger, and then you get back both of your daggers. So you're alternating between 1 and 2 dagger turns, is like one way this could play out. The other way is that you try and keep flick knivesing every turn. I guess the other way is that you keep playing 1 dagger turns because you can play a dagger, flick it, recur it, and you just keep doing that until you have like your what is that card called? Blood Run Deep, which is like the new card that costs 1 less for each Draconic Chain Link and lets you flick all your daggers for 1 damage each. So that one will just flick both of them on its own, and I think makes a lot of sense given the card that we saw. Um, so yeah,
What's the other way you can flick other than flick knives?
hurl,
Oh, that's the split card that lets you.
pay 1 to flick a dagger. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's considered as hit too, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we basically have like hurl, flick knives, and blood runs deep. I have to imagine that we're getting more cards in this set, honestly, because this card's really weird and limited if you don't have ways to flick this dagger. Like Syndra's hero ability is like kind of awkward. I guess you could just like have daggers 1 turn, then have to play a bunch of head jabs to get them back. Like maybe that's their intention.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if there is like an efficient way to flick these kunais, then Syndrome might be too good.
It's possible. I think something that's going to happen in CC for sure is when you get low against Syndra, you're just gonna die. Um,
Yeah, single digit being at single digits against Syndra means you're dead in 2 turns or 3 turns for sure.
yeah, because like Kodachi Lock is already really nasty. I'm sure most people are familiar with that. But when you add on the layer of having the like unpreventable flick knives damage too, like, oh yeah, it's gross. You're just gonna kill people. The other thing that's like very interesting about these daggers is if you re-equip them, you can swing them again because it's technically like a new dagger. Like even though you've like played that dagger and then you've returned it, it's like it should be a new object, so you should be able to swing it again. So you can potentially do stuff like dagger, dagger, blood runs deep, flicking both daggers, buy back my kunais, dagger, dagger again, which is pretty strong. Or if you're like talking about like theoretical super late end games, you can go like dagger, dagger, flick, close the chain, pitch a blue, pick up my daggers, dagger, dagger, and then you'll have no daggers, but on your next turn you can like pitch a blue on their turn, get back your daggers, and then do a similar loop again. So you can sort of just like you can threaten so many ones, given the space that it's pretty scary.
That play pattern sounds like a play pattern that's probably gonna come up in limited. Is like pitch a blue on your opponent's turn, pick up the daggers, and then on your own turn, pitch a blue dagger dagger, and like you keep on doing that. That sounds like a nice end game for Syndra for limited.
Yeah, basically, I think the way that it works out is your loop will be if you have 4 blues, you can dagger 3 times, right? You go 2 resources to dagger daggers, a blue. Oh no, you can dagger 4 times. Yeah, you can dagger 4 times. 4 resources for the daggers, 3 for Syndra activation, so that's 7 resources, and then 3 on your opponent's turn. So yeah, if you have a 4 or even like 3 blues and a red, if you have 4 cards that you can just keep doing this, you can just deal 1 4 times over and over and over again. So if your opponent's ever at 1, you can keep your hand. The game is like pretty effectively over unless there's I don't know, some way to deal with multiple instances of one damage, like damage prevention or something.
Yeah, like floating damage prevention.
Yeah, or life gain, or unless there's like some other way to deal with this, like you can just effectively completely lock people out, which is pretty strong. Like the fact that you just do that and that's built into your hero ability and weapons is just, yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah, that's a way I think a lot of people is gonna lose early in this format. It's like at least at Prague is people just gonna be like, oh, I can go to one against Syndra, and then like play out their whole turn, and they'll be like, Syndra keeps 4 cards, and be like, huh, I wonder what they have, and be like, they have like just like unplayable blues left, and they you get locked out of the game.
I think honestly, even going down to like 4 or 5 in limited and against Syndra is gonna be pretty scary, pretty fast. If you can take most of her hand, like I guess that is like one thing about Syndra is that she can get kind of shut down where like she doesn't have like the Katsu endgame where you can just go like dagger, dagger, block 3 cards, dagger, dagger. Well, no, you can't because you can't recur them. So yeah, she potentially has like a worse endgame on the back foot, but a very strong one on the front foot.
Yeah, very strong. Okay, then do you want to move on and talk about the next weapon?
Yeah, so I think the other weapons won't have quite as much to discuss. Syndra just has like a lot of rules and a lot of situations to talk about. We can talk about Fang's weapon next. This is called Obsidian Firebane. It's a 1 power Draconic Warrior weapon dagger. It's one-handed. It's a once per turn attack action. Pay 1 resource, and it says if you've played a Draconic card this chain link, this gets +1 and go again. So, assuming that you can turn this on reliably, which I have to imagine that you're going to, he is a Draconic Warrior after all. This is basically a Zephyr Needle that never breaks, or Starfall if you like. And we know that 1 for 2 go again is really good, and having 2 of them is really, really good. Like we saw Zen play Zephyr Needles and Aggro Mirrors even though they broke. And that was just like one of the best decks in the format, or just was the best deck in the format. It's one of the best decks we've seen. So I think that this is like actually a really powerful weapon. It will depend very heavily on what we see. I kind of, notably, it does need to be this chain link. So that means Draconic Warrior attack reactions are kind of the thing to look for. And I guess potentially just warrior attack reactions with fealty tokens as well, because fealties make the next card draconic. So you could make Blade Flurry into a draconic card, for example, so long as you have fealty tokens. So marking is still going to be important to Fang, but this weapon's pretty pushed, I think.
Yeah, well, it is. It does feel push, but it does require you to have like, as you said, like a fealty token for this card to be really insane. Unless they print like 4 constructed playable draconic attack reactions, right?
I kind of think we're just going to see that, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's too good. I don't know.
Like constructed playable draconic attack reactions. Like it has to pump like minimum 3 for it to be good at 0 cost. That would be too good.
We already have one.
Isn't that an M though?
Yeah, it's an M, but like
Fang's not gonna get 4 M's. That's at attack reaction that worked with Obsidian.
but they don't all have to be M's. Like they can be like Fang. Like think about Fang and Limited. Are you telling me that like Fang? We've also seen a bunch of the Warrior M's, but like think about Fang and Limited. Like there's no way. There's no way there isn't like some reasonable warrior attack reaction in Limited that's draconic. Like this hero just like doesn't make sense in Limited if there aren't warrior attack reactions.
We've seen warriors in the past sets. They get shafted every time.
Because the floor of a 1 for 1 no go again is so bad.
Yeah, like I don't know. I've seen worse. Like I've seen worse. Look. We always seen these like heroes like Olympia. You know, like it happens. They just get shafted.
Like that's true. Like the heroes work in limited. I don't think Fang works in limited if you don't get draconic attack reactions.
No, but like I think there's gonna be draconic attack reactions. But like, do you remember? Is it heavy hitters where the warrior attack reactions were like they were limited playable, but they were definitely not constructed playable? Like imagine like a 1 cost that pumps for like 2 or something. That draconic.
I think we'll get 1 cost pumps for 3. that has some upside. That's kind of what I think we'll see, because we've seen them print that stat line for Warrior a lot, and I think that that's like kind of okay. It gives you the floor of like 5 go again into 1, which is like a 2 card 6, which isn't like super exciting, but is like something. And then in CC that'll translate to 2 card 7 with dynamos. Oh, it sounds so medium. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. That the card that you're explaining right now isn't good enough in CC.
Yeah, and it is good enough in limited. Okay, okay, maybe you're right.
The thing is with the card that you're explaining is it'll be kind of nice if they have like a another one-handed warrior weapon like a hatchet or something that you pair with Obsidian Fire Vein. So you go like 2 go again with the Fire Vein, and you end off with a hatchet of body or something. So then you guarantee to have like an attack for 2 at the end of it. So you don't have to play like a Draconic Chain Link to get to the second power.
Just like a 1 for 2 no go again, but doesn't have a condition.
Yeah,
That'd be kind of spicy. I'd kind of like to see that. I guess we have seen limited weapons. Like we saw Warrior have limited weapons in heavy hitters, so that's definitely something that they could do. I was sort of like they're not doing limited weapons anymore, but that's just not true.
yeah, yeah. We can see new more like main decked or not main decked, sorry, main set weapons in this draft set, right?
That's true. That's true. We also saw a ball breaker in heavy hitters, so yeah, they've definitely done this. Okay, okay. You know what? I almost feel convinced that we're gonna see another dagger for Vang now. Now that you say that.
Just or maybe even just for the warrior, just the warrior's gonna get one.
Yeah, yeah, for Fang.
Do you know what do we know for sure is that we're gonna be talking about Arachne's weapon next at token, but there's guaranteed to be another dagger in the set with a different name.
It's true. What if? Do you think they're gonna print a generic dagger in this set that all the heroes can use?
That would be sick. Actually, honestly, if they do print another dagger that like is like a generic one-handed dagger for like anyone to be able to use, that would mean like they won't need to have ways to flick the kunais.
That's interesting. Yeah, they'd have to be like careful with what that dagger looks like. You can't print like a generic Kodachi into the game. That sounds not good for the game. But
No, okay. I've mentioned this to like locals before. There is a design that this game needs that would improve all the classes immediately. Is if they print something like a card of we were joking that they should call it a kitchen knife. It would just be a kitchen knife that costs 1 and does 1 damage. No go again, no other text. That card would just be like that card will see play somewhere in CC. Imagine like if you're a wizard, you get to play a kitchen knife. You get to stab someone for 1. Like imagine playing against Enigma and not needing to Crucible. You just get to stab them for 1 every other turn.
sure, it's a card they could design. I'm not really convinced that it's good, but who knows?
Like imagine Rangers. If Rangers needs a weapon, they can hold a kitchen knife.
We'll see. We'll see. I hope it's more exciting than that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Look, honestly, if they print a generic one-handed dagger that's just like pay 1, deal 1, no other text, I would be excited. Like that would open up so many more variations of bad decks that people can make. It would be great.
That's true, I suppose. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if Fang's gonna have like more attack reactions that let you attack an additional time. Like we've seen that on Long Whisker Loyalty, and we've seen that like Flurry stance, Agility stance, Power stance, which give your daggers like the yellow one gives your daggers go again, the red one lets you attack additional time, and the blue one lets you give your daggers +1. I kind of wonder if Fang's gonna be able to like, yeah, especially with his hero text like making them free. I kind of wonder if you're gonna get like a bunch of this like attack extra times with your dagger kind of clause. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it'll be hard to say right now with the card spoiled so far, but we'll have to see. We'll know in 2 weeks, like for sure.
Think about like 1 for 3 warrior attack reaction, draconic. You can attack with your dagger additional time, and you just gotta go like Fangs of Hero abilities online, you gotta go like dagger for free, give it +4, like +3 and +1. Dagger for dagger for free, do it again. Dagger for free, do it again, and you just play like a 3 card 15. Like that's pretty sick. To go like 5 go again, 5 go again, 5 go again. That actually sounds like kind of reasonable, even if it's the 1 for 3. Like it has some ramp up time. You have to have the mark online. You're probably gonna get like 1 for 3 Draconic Warrior attack reaction mark, or like on hit mark, or like
Yeah, that would make the most sense. Is like on hit mark. But man, that does not sound that good.
what if we get like one that's on hit mark and one that's like on hit attack additional time or something?
Why would you ever play the one that marks?
Because you need a mark.
You don't need to mark. They'll probably be dead by the time you mark them. If you can attack additional time like twice, just pay for it. It's fine. You don't need to make the daggers free.
Well, in CC it'd probably be good enough.
Yeah, and CC will definitely be good enough. The games are much longer.
You know what? I feel pretty confident that we're going to see this. This is my prediction. This is my spoiler prediction. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see those 2 cards. 1 for 3. Maybe we'll be like a cycle, because Draconic always comes in red, so maybe there'll be like 3 of them. Mark, additional attack. I don't know what the other one is.
+1 damage.
+1 damage is the 1 for 4. Yeah, I could see that. Because like that those are kind of like the modes on Long Wisdom Loyalty, right? Plus damage, additional attack, mark, and I guess that's not the modes on Agility, Flurry, and Power Stance, but a Draconic attack reaction that gives go again sounds so depressing, because the dagger already gets go again. So like, I hope they don't do that. Unless there's another Draconic. If there's another Draconic dagger, fine. But like, right now this sounds really troll.
Yeah, it's like, oh, my card gets go again, go again. Oh, good design, guys. Good design. Okay, let's move on and talk about Mark of the Huntsman. So this is not an Arachne weapon. This is an assassin weapon, one-handed dagger that attacks for 1. And it says once per turn action, pay 2 to attack, go again. And it has attacks. When this hits a hero, you may choose to destroy this and mark them. And it has another line of text that says, if this is attacking a marked hero, this gets +1.
And the other rules interaction that we had confirmed by the rules team is if you flick this with flick knives or hurl, you can choose to destroy it and mark them, even though the flick knives or hurl also destroys the dagger. So because it's like an on hit, you can like choose to do it and it will destroy it, but it's already destroyed, but you don't have to do the destroy to get the effect. Does that make sense? Like you can choose to destroy it and mark them even though it's already destroyed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think so. I think it like TCG wise, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's your take on this card?
This dagger. So I was having a conversation. I've had a few conversations, and my kind of stance was that like I had a lot of people saying like, oh, the dagger is going to be 2 cost, 1 go again on hit mark, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then I was thinking about it, I'm like, I don't even know if that's good enough. Like, it's fine. I guess it's like pretty decent. Like maybe it's pretty strong. That means like your next stealth attack gets +1 and go again because of Marionette, then you can flip. It's like pretty good. It's like, I guess it's like a little better than Beckoning Mistblade. But the fact that you have to destroy is tough. And the upside of +1 when you mark them, and then they'll probably just take it and will consume your mark, sounds so depressing.
Yeah, like when you hit somebody with who's marked, the mark goes away after you hit them, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's not like you can control if you're gonna be able to like not hit, essentially, if you're presenting damage. So your opponent just like gets to decide if they want to remove their mark or not. After getting like, let's say you like attack with the Mark of the Huntsman and you destroy it and mark them, and you follow up with another attack. Like they're the one that gets to decide if they want to like get hit by the attack and lose their mark, or have the mark left on them, so they get to so you get to transform with Arachne.
Yeah. It's very hard to comment. I don't like being the person that doomers about heroes when we don't have very many spoilers, but I will say that Arachne needs some very good ways to mark to mark heroes, or I don't see this hero being very good. And I don't think that Mark of the Huntsman counts. I think that Like maybe you can play one of these in CC. Maybe there's like a dagger re-equip theme. That sounds so bad too. Like okay, maybe if there's like good dagger re-equip cards, even that sounds questionable.
Okay, I think you do play one of these because you're just gonna play Scale Peeler as one of your weapons, and your second weapon slot doesn't matter, right? Like it almost never matters for any of the assassins. So you're just gonna play the mark.
I guess we see this in like Uzuri too, right? Where like Uzuri plays flick knives and like doesn't even typically have a way to get the daggers back, and the first dagger you flick is like not free because you only get to do like 2 flick knives total, but like you can flick the first dagger and it doesn't significantly impact your gameplay loop.
Yeah, yeah. Like assassins attacking with two daggers typically means that your opponent literally did nothing, or like your hand was that bad. I feel like equipping the mark as your second dagger is pretty reasonable. It's just
Yeah, okay.
okay. It's like it's not that much of a downside that this dagger sucks. It's more of that it's a one time use mark, and if this is your way to mark, this is gonna be bad, right? Because you want to be able to mark your opponent like hopefully like 5 to 7 times in a game pretty easily and or consistently, or honestly like every turn if possible, honestly. And this card isn't that, right? Like this isn't letting you mark very consistently.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe you've put it the best way. So like this is like part of the puzzle, but yeah, it's such a big question with like both Fang and Arachne, especially as just like how do you mark? Maybe there's like I don't know. Maybe there's like a gloves that marks or something.
No, no, not a gloves, not a gloves. It's gonna be like a chess piece that marks. That would make this like this whole like if they print like a warrior assassin split card that like a chess piece marks your opponent. I think it'll be kind of sick, and I feel like that would be like a good spot to put it in because like it has to replace a tunic, right? And that's like one of the most powerful equipments. So like if you're being able to mark every other turn through your chess piece, that'll probably be like a good replacement for a tunic. That would be like the power level of like a tunic.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be sick, right? Like for CC, if you're able to like mark your opponent every turn with your chess piece.
Okay. Yeah. I think if there's some reasonable way to mark, then these heroes make a lot of there has to be, right? Like there has to be some reasonable way to mark. I'm just so curious what it is because right now I'm just like, how do you do the thing? I'm sure there's a way. I trust Alsace.
Yeah, at least in constructed, I'm assuming they're gonna print a legendary piece that allows these heroes to mark, but Ninja doesn't need to mark. So I'm assuming it's gonna be a warrior assassin split card.
What if it's just generic? They could just make it generic.
Why though? Like you don't
Then Syndra can use it.
do you want the ability for like new to be able to mark people? Is that a thing?
Yeah, maybe.
Uh
I mean, it could just be like a generic that like not everybody wants, right? I think that's fine. We've seen that. Like just because it's a generic doesn't mean that like every character plays it. We've seen a lot of cards like that.
okay, you know what? That's very fair. That's very fair. But I'm just like hoping for the existence of like a warrior assassin split card. And then I want assassin to be like the split card class of like assassin just gets like the dash in between all their good cards.
Could be. We'll see. We'll see.
That makes like thematical sense, right? That like assassins are like part of like other classes and like they can like learn all the other like classes stuff. That thematically makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sure. I could buy that. That sounds so reasonable.
Okay, yeah. Anything else you want to say about Marks of the Huntsman?
This card doesn't make me that excited for Arachne, but
Oh, this card made me really sad about Arachne. That's for sure.
playing this card in limited sounds. Oh.
No, no. In limited, you only have to transform twice. That's the line here. It's 20 life format. Like you just transform twice, and then hopefully that's good enough. That's 4 turns.
Ugh.
That's a lot of
What if
turns.
you just like don't have a weapon after that? That sounds.
You gotta win the game on the spot, Yuki. Just don't lose. Just don't lose.
Assassins aren't exactly known for just like winning the game in the spot. I feel like they're known for dragging the game out super long, and I feel like you're gonna drag the game out super long and be like, "Why don't I have a weapon?" I don't know. Maybe the simple answer is there's like dagger re-equip stuff. Maybe there's like ninja assassin dagger re-equip cards for Syndra and Arachne. I could see that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. We already had concealed blade in the last set, right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm very curious to see what they have in mind. They clearly have something going on with this set. It's just, yeah. You want to talk about some of these expansion cards?
The episode's already kind of getting long. We can talk about. You know, just talk about one of the cards. Or do you think if we started talking about Spurlock right now, it'd be too long? So that's the card I really want to talk about. Is Spurlocked?
Yeah, we can talk about Spurlocked.
Okay. Let me just say this. Okay, a shout out to Spurlock because it's like Brody's card, and it's kind of not flavorful, but like I kind of love the design on this card. As just like that they named it Spurlock, for Brody Spurlock. I love the naming of this card. Let's just say that for sure. And I guess we'll talk about the ability on this card on a different time.
No, we should talk about it. We can talk about Spurlock. Let's talk about Spurlock. You can't just like say that we like the card and then not talk about it.
It's gonna take us like half an hour to talk about this card.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll be quick. We'll be quick.
Okay, sure. We'll keep it quick and brief then. Okay, so this is a card we want to talk about. Spurlocked. It is a chaos action. It pitches for blue and it causes 0 to play. Blocks for 3. And this card reads: each hero secretly chooses a number between 1 and 6. Then those numbers are revealed. The hero that chose the highest number loses that much life. Searches their deck for a card with cost less than or equal to the chosen number, reveals it, puts it in their hand, then shuffles. Go again. So that was a lot of words. What does this card do, Yuki?
You play a mini game where you both pick a number. The highest number gets to pay life to search their deck for a card and add it to their hand. Basically, is like in plain English what the card does. Do we know what happens if you tie?
Nothing.
Nothing happens because neither hero revealed the highest.
Yeah, or the hero that chose the highest number loses that much life. Oh.
What did you both choose the highest number?
Oh.
Do we have rules? Do we know?
I actually don't know. When I first read it and was first talking about it, I assumed that if you chose the same number, that neither player lost life, neither player searches. But now that you ask this question, that is a good question. If you tie, do you both get to look?
I think if there's a tie, I think that nothing happens, but we'll need the rules text to know for sure. Let's discuss it as if nothing happens.
Yeah, that was my take on this card.
Yeah, I read the Judge Hub Discord. This seemed to be what people were leaning towards, but I guess we need release notes to know for sure. Okay, before we talk about this card fully, do you think this card is good?
I think this card is good. I think that's where I will start. I think this card is good. I don't know if this card will see play because it's only for Chaos, which means it's only for Arachne right now. But if any hero can play it, I think this card is really good.
I don't know if I think this card is good. I think this card is a blue block 3. And maybe because it's a blue block 3 where there's situations that is powerful will make it good, like in the end game. Maybe that alone makes it good enough. When they're low on life, it's hard for them to choose a high number.
So I think the best example I can give you for when this card is just insane will be, this is a blue card, right? So this is gonna go into your pitch stack.
Mm-hmm.
So you never play this card on first cycle. I think that's my take on this card, is you'll never play this card on first cycle unless it's free to do so, or like, you got to a point in the game where you can play this on first cycle, sure. But if your opponent's at 1 and you're at, like, let's say like 5 or 6 and you play Spurlocked, you get to choose 2. You just get to say 2. If your opponent says any number more than 1, they immediately lose the game if they choose higher.
Mm-hmm.
That means this is just a card that you get to play it, you lose 2 life, and you get the best card in your deck. So you get to find the red in your deck in the pitch in the late game and like play that card.
Okay.
So I think in that scenario it's good. So what does your opponent need to do if they don't want to lose the game on the spot? is they kind of need to play the mini game of they need to name 2 while they're at 1 if they want to try and like tie to basically, stay in the game. And there's this mini game. Sometimes if you just don't have a target, you name 1 as well, and they name 2, and you just win the game on the spot.
I can see why you like this card. This sounds like such a J card.
Right, like, and then the layers get like deeper and deeper the closer your life totals are, and like imagine your opponent's at 2 and you're at 3 and you play this card. Like, what's the number you name? That's just like I don't even know at that point.
Yeah.
I think as a general baseline, if you're thinking about this card at like both players at 40 life and you play this card, how good is this card? I think the answer is it's not that good unless you have like a combo, and I don't think Arachne is a combo deck. So I don't think it's good in that sense.
Yeah. I think I agree. And I think if listeners are wondering why I was saying that I think it's not good, or like Jay said it's not good first cycle, the reason I think it's not good first cycle is that you have to play Spurlocked as a card from your hand and then pay life, whereas your opponent only has to pay life. So there's like immediately asymmetry in it where, like, okay, if you pay, let's say you pay 4 life and you win. If you pay 4 life to get a Codex of Frailty, that's like okay. But like if Codex is like, I don't know, like a 7-point card and you've paid 4 life, you're kind of getting like 3 points out of this. So the Spurlock is kind of worth like 3 points, which is like fine, but not incredible. But for your opponent, if they pay 4 life and they get a Codex, they're just up 3 points because they didn't have to spend a card from their hand to get that card. So like when you have high life totals, your opponent is always like able to choose a higher number than you and extract more value from it. And I think that part of the card is like very awkward. But I do think that when life totals get low and there starts to being like, especially like sub 6, it gets quite interesting.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Because you play this card, the minimum number you kind of have to name is 3, right? Because if your opponent ever gets to choose, like, let's say 2, and like they get a card by paying 2 life, that's insane value for your opponent, right?
Yeah, in some senses, like, so I think if you have Spurlocked played against you, you can name a very high number. It's interesting. I don't know, like, I'm not exactly sure what the optimal number is. But hypothetically, like, you could say, like, is 6 life a good deal on this card? And it's kind of not bad because you've effectively spent 6 life to get the best card in your deck for your current hand. So you actually go up a card. So it's like kind of going like up in intelligence. And then your opponent has also effectively gone down a card because they've played Spurlocked and done nothing.
Well, they then Spurlocked and dealt 6 damage.
They did 6 damage, but like, I guess what I mean is like trading 6 life. Like, okay, 6 life is worth like 6 life if your opponent goes down a card and you go up a card and a card is worth 3 is neutral. But if you're getting the best card in your deck, it's probably worth more than 3. So I think that, like, hypothetically, like, even paying 6 as the opponent, it's like often kind of fine. But if you're like playing Spurlocked and you name 6, it's like really, really not good.
So the thing about it though is like I think a way to think about this card might be like, if you play this and if your opponent always names 6 and they always lose 6 life, then this is a 0 for 6 unblockable that your opponent gets to search their deck and add a card into their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that doesn't sound that bad actually?
No, it doesn't sound that bad, but
It doesn't sound that good, but it's a blue card, right? So it's a blue card that attacks for 6 that your opponent gets to draw a card or search their deck for the best card in their deck and add it to their hand. It's not good, but it's not the worst. Like that's almost on rate. Like that's fine. I think the problem with this card is that it has the fail case of like your opponent just like snipes the same number as you do, and then neither player loses life, and then all you've done was play a card with go again, and then now you're just down a card and nothing happened.
mm-hmm.
I think that's the worst case scenario with this card. Or maybe the worst case scenario is your opponent names 2 and they win.
So, okay, I have a question. If you play Spurlocked and you name 4 and you win, is Spurlocked a good card?
Ooh, I don't know.
I kind of don't think so.
I think Spurlocked is a card that's gonna be good if you name 3 and then you win. 3 or less, and if you can win on 3 or less, this card's really good.
Yeah, I think if you can name 3 or less, it's reasonable because you, as of what we know right now, like you get codex, right? That's like probably what you do most of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think about 3 is like about the maximum that you're probably willing to pay for codex, which probably means that your opponent can just like comfortably name 4. I think that you're just supposed to name 4 if somebody plays Spurlock against you. And what happens is if they name 4, you tie. If you pay 4 and you go up a card and they go down a card, I think that's a good deal for you, especially because you get to choose the card that you get. And then if they choose 5 or 6, I think is like actively bad for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So then I think on the inverse, then that means if your opponent's at 4 and then you play Spurlocked, that's good for you then,
That's probably true.
right? Because then they can't name 4, and then imagine they like name 3 and win. They go to 1, then you dagger them.
Yeah, the more cards you have in hand, the scarier this gets. I guess there is also some like weirdness where I guess in big hands this card gets really scary where like Arachne takes a bunch of damage, keeps a 5-card hand. They play Spurlocked. Do you want to pay life and grab your, I don't know, Mordred Tide? Like, what if they have Bonds of Agony? It's kind of interesting.
That is true, but I feel like if both players are at high life totals, then still Spurlocked is like not. It's not. You don't really still don't want to play it. You still don't want to play it.
Because even if you block with a bond, even if you block with a Mordred Tide, you're more likely to have like a turn afterwards, and you have to take damage to make that play. So yeah, I think you're right that at high life totals, yeah, I think at high life totals, this card is like not really a card you're supposed to be playing, and I think that you're supposed to name 4 as the opponent.
This is like a card they get to pitch stack like for free. Like this is like a no cost pitch stack card that like puts a lot of pressure on your opponent the moment you play this card. If if Arachne is higher life total. And that might just be the hardest part about this card is like this assumes that Arachne needs to be winning or in a winning position for you to be playing this card.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any equity in this card where like people will misplay?
Oh, 100%. I think that's the biggest equity in this card. Cuz like imagine like in a spot where you're kind of losing and both players at like 3 or something or 2 and then you play Spurlocked. Do you name 1 or 2, right? Like it's just like that's just going to be like the biggest like that's just gonna be like the biggest edge. Your opponent names the wrong number, you get a card for 2 life, and then you win the game on the spot. Or then the vice versa happens. Your opponent names too high of a number, and then they just like kind of like get Kodachi locked for no reason because you know they pay too much life.
What if you have multiple Spurlocks?
You can find Spurlock with Spurlock.
I don't think that's good, but that is always, I think that is always bad. But I do think that like your opponent's at 3, you play Spurlocked. It's sort of interesting if you name 1 and they go up a card, and then you have like another Spurlocked, and you're just like you can't name a card. It's interesting. I don't know if it's good because your opponent did go up a card, and you're spending like 2 cards for it. You did 2 damage. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think this is a good end game card. I don't know how it will come down to play. I don't know if it's good in Arachne is the problem, is what I'm gonna have. And what I mean by that, I don't know if it's good in Assassin, because Assassin is like a kind of hero that typically is like on parity or usually behind when it comes to like late game scenarios. It's very you're almost never in a spot where you're gonna have like a 10-point life difference against your opponent playing assassin, right? Like games are gonna be close no matter what.
That's pretty true.
If imagine like you get this card in like Zen or something, that'd be like insane,
Yeah, that's true.
right? Like
That's true.
yeah, imagine getting hit for 20 and then the next turn you after you blocked out and then your opponent just plays like Spurlocked and you're like, if I name 6, I go to like 4 and then Zen just kills me, or you name a low number and Zen just gets the combo card. Like that's just insane, right?
Yeah, okay. If this was Mystic, it would be really broken. I was also imagining like they cash in Traverse. You're at like 15. and they play Spurlocked, and you're just like, what do I do? Like,
Yeah, even if you name 4, you kind of die.
yeah, you just like Zen probably just kills you.
Yeah, like a blue 0 for 4. Yeah, your opponent can draw a card. That's fine. It's like even if they get like a defense reaction, I don't care. Like, yeah, whatever you want. Unblockable damage is unblockable damage, then they get a transcend.
Syndra with this card, holy, yeah, okay. I was not so sure that Spurlocked is a good card. I think you've convinced me that this card has spots where it is good, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I think where this card lands is like is if Arachne is a deck that can like really pressure your opponent at lower life totals, then once your opponent's at low life totals, then this card becomes good in second cycle. And a blue that's good in second cycle is just always good. So I think this is like a good blue 3 block to play. I think this card is a bad card if you're just like looking at this card in the lens of like, oh, like at the same power level as a red, but this is like a pitch stack. This is like a pitch stack, get into these scenarios where your opponent's not familiar with. You play Spurlocked, and then you might be able to like cheese wins out of your opponents where you would never have been able to otherwise.
That's pretty fair. Yeah, okay. I can buy that. Yeah. I think that playing this early is almost always going to be a throw. The more I think about it, the more that I hate it. It's just like,
Yo, but then imagine your opponent names the wrong number. They like misunderstand the card and they say 1 and you name 2 because you just assume they're gonna name 4, and then you get a card for 2 life. That's insane.
it's so dangerous though. Like, there's going to be like a bunch of heroes where you just like can never play this card because like depending on their hand, if you give them an extra card of their choice, you might just give them infinite value. Like imagine playing this against like Enigma. Like there's just gonna be hands where she's just like 6, and then she's just like, here's like double mirror guy, you're fucking dead. Like there's just, I don't know. I think that, yeah, I think there's gonna be heroes where you like really can't play this card if they have like crazy enough hands.
That's fair. Imagine giving Viscerai Mordred Tide.
Yeah, or like Aurora,
Channel
like
Valley.
has like a sick hand. I was thinking like you just like give them arc flicker
Oh
combo.
yeah, you give them Arc Flicker combo. Oh no, like the second Arc Lightning. Or yeah, the second arc lighting for the infinite damage. Yeah, okay.
I mean, I guess you do gotta like follow it up with disruption, but it's pretty spooky. It's pretty spooky.
It'll be funny though if you like set up a Spurlock, you name 1, they name like 3, they get the Mordred Tide in hand, and then you hit them with the bonds, and you just like be like, I'm gonna rip both your Mordred Tides from your hand now.
Yeah, the existence of bonds with this card is very, very interesting. That makes it like have like maybe there will be first cycle spots where you play this card.
No, you know what the problem is? You just you know the card you just add with Spurlocked after you pay 4 life?
What's that?
Sink Below.
Ooh, that's so true.
You just add Sink Below, and then you gotta keep your 4 card hand, and you just got a 4 block for your 4 life. That's fair. Like that's just fine.
Yeah, that's pretty true. Yeah, I can already imagine it. Somebody's gonna listen to this podcast, sit down across from Jay. Jay's playing Arachne Marionette. First cycle, Jay plays Spurlock. Just like, what's happening? What do I do?
If I'm playing Spurlock first cycle, I figured something out. That's where I'm at. I figured something out that somebody doesn't know.
Maybe you just want to play the Battle Hardened.
That would be insane. That would be the biggest brain. Is like you play Spurlock thinking that like you're gonna like you want to lose the game, so you name 2, and then they like triple next level themselves and naming 1.
And then you win and you don't get to play the Commoner Battle Hardened again. This just sounds like something that could happen to you.
Yeah, that's true.
It sounds so likely.
Yeah, I just keep on playing Spurlock, keep naming 2, and then like my opponent keeps naming 1 because they don't want to lose any life. Yeah, that would be insane.
Okay.
Honestly, at Armory, if I get to play Arachne Marionette, I'm just gonna first cycle Spurlocked and see what happens. Just like talking about this card theoretically and talking about this card like actually in game and playing with it has to be different.
That's probably true. Imagine if Brody wins an event with this card. That would be sick.
That would be sick. That would be sick. Okay, but let's wrap up the episode. It's getting quite long, and this means I also need to edit this episode before we head out to Battle Hard in Toronto. So, um, yeah, let's wrap it up here.
Thank you all for listening. Hope you found this episode helpful. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. Jay is at UAdaJ. I'm at Yuki Bender over on Twitter. We have an email on thebauble@gmail.com, and you can check us out at patreon.com/onthebauble. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you all next time where we talk about, I guess, World Premiere Prague, what my experience was like with that, and the set primer for the Hunted. So yeah, there'll be a bit of a gap. There'll be 1 week where both Jay and I are away traveling, and it's just not really going to be possible for us to record. And then from there, it will be straight into everything Hunted. So looking forward to it, and we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.